It was a cornfield back there. I pulled through it, and on the other side of the cornfield was a trash pile. I parked the car facing out where I could see anybody coming in. So I pulled her out of the car. She's too big for me to carry her. So I just pulled her out of the car and laid on that trash that was left there.
So is it like a corn?
Samuel Little is the most prolific American serial killer of all time. Despite the fact that few people even know his gruesome story, let alone his name, Samuel has recently confessed to killing 93 people across more than a dozen states between 1970 and 2005. After the FBI and Texas Rangers were able to confirm 50 of those killings, Little officially passed more well-known murderers like Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy to become the deadliest known serial killer in US history. What makes him even more disturbing is that the authorities were able to confirm some of his killings thanks in part to portraits of the victims drawn by Samuel himself. While dozens of unsolved murdered women remain, these drawings so far helped to reopen and eventually close dozens of cold cases. Born in Georgia in 1940, Samuel Little soon moved with his family to Ohio, where he grew up in poverty and got in trouble in school early on. Soon enough, he graduated to petty crimes and was eventually arrested for breaking and entering in Nebraska in 1956. His crimes, however, only grew more serious from there as he traveled across nearly a dozen US states and racked up arrests for crimes ranging from shoplifting and fraud to assault and rape. From an outsider's point of view, it was only a matter of time until Samuel Little would commit murder. He later claimed to have been active as a killer going back to the dawn of the 70s, but his first arrest for murder came in 1982 in Mississippi. However, there wasn't enough evidence to convict him of murder. Meanwhile, he was arrested for another killing in Florida, but was also let go not long after. He then moved to California, and unfortunately his prime years of killing would only begin. His murder victims were marginalized and vulnerable people, often prostitutes or women addicted to drugs. According to the FBI, their bodies, if they were found, typically went unidentified, and their murders were not carefully investigated. Samuel's method of killing, which was strangulation, didn't always leave reliable signs for local police to determine whether the woman's death was a homicide. The FBI said he usually stunned or knocked out his victims before strangling them, thus leaving no signs of a struggle. Samuel, who was once a competitive boxer, would typically dump the bodies of his victims wherever he could, whether it was alleys, dumpsters, or a garage, after first knocking them out, beating, and strangling them. Perhaps the craziest part of the story, other than the sheer amount of victims Samuel had, was how long it took for him to be apprehended. Richard Nixon had just finished his first year in office when Samuel began beating and strangling women to death, while Barack Obama was entering his second term when he was finally caught. He was often suspected, but authorities could never pin the crimes on him. With no stab marks or bullet wounds, many of these deaths were not classified as homicides, but attributed to drug overdoses, accidents, or natural causes. The FBI said in its initial report in November 2018. It was not until September 2012 when his streak finally came to an end. A narcotics-related warrant for Samuel's arrest caught the attention of an officer, which led him to Little in a homeless shelter in Kentucky. After his subsequent deportation to Los Angeles, DNA samples were taken and finally matched the victims in 3 unsolved murders from 1987 to 1989. He pleaded not guilty to all 3 homicide charges despite witnesses' testimonies from various women who narrowly escaped his clutches. He was eventually convicted in 2014 and received 3 consecutive life sentences. Little's DNA was matched to the killing of Denise Christie brothers in Odessa, Texas. He was found dead from strangulation in an empty parking lot in January 1994, a few blocks from a motel. This match led to the cooperative efforts between the FBI and Texas Rangers. Samuel Little provided them with such detailed, minute statements that only brother's real killer would have known, and was subsequently indicted by a grand jury on July 16, 2018. He was then sent to Texas to face the newfound charges, for which he pleaded guilty this time and received a further life sentence. In December 2018, the FBI's DNA Central Forensic Laboratory found a match between Little and the murder of 23-year-old Linda Sue Boards, who was found in a field on May 15, 1981, and last seen alive 4 days earlier on her way to a nightclub in Bowling Green. A Warren County grand jury in Kentucky was subsequently able to indict Little of this crime too. "I never believed my sister died of natural causes. None of us did," said Jesse Lane Downs. But now we know, thank the Lord. Cunningham's death was a mystery to her family for nearly 44 years, since she was found by two hunters on January 18, 1975, bruised and dumped in the woods. Fortunately, the FBI's collaboration with law enforcement all over the country continues to close cases such as these, and provide the families of Little's victims with some resemblance of peace. Samuel Little died at 4:53 a.m. on the 30th of December 2020. The official cause was natural causes determined by the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office. In 2018, Samuel Little confessed to the murder of 93 women nationwide from the 1970s through to 2005. The FBI says it believes all of the confessions are credible. Since then, law enforcement officers from around the U.S. have tried to connect details of his confessions to unsolved homicides in their region. They had verified at least 50 of Little's murders confessions as of last year. I know I spoke about this earlier, but Samuel Little got away from the law for almost 34 years. 34 years. For some perspective, I haven't been alive for 4 years, which is just insane to be honest. I know that most killers either never got caught or get away with their killings in the 80s and 90s, but imagine if something like this would have happened today. With CCTV being around every corner, it is very difficult for anyone to ever reach the numbers that Samuel reached, and that's why I honestly think this case is the most unique case I've ever read about. Alright guys, this brings us to the end of the video. If you like this video, please give it a like and sub to the channel. It would mean the world to me. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.